Hi everyone, this is the Nordic Venture Show, your guide to the exciting world of Nordic startups and venture capital. In today's episode, we're exploring a startup called Rodinia Generation.
All right, fashion fans, techies, and everyone in between, get ready, because today we're diving headfirst into the fascinating world of Rodinia Generation and their whole thing with microfactories.
Yeah, it's pretty wild. Microfactories, sustainable fashion. I mean, it sounds like something straight out of a sci-fi movie, right?
Totally. But hold on, let's back up for a sec. Before we get too deep, we need to break down what we're actually dealing with here. We've got this company, Rodinia Generation, right? And they're all about this next generation clothing production technology. I mean,
Bold. That's a bold statement.
right. But they seem to be walking the walk. They've got some seriously impressive names backing them up.
And
And
their website is sleek. I mean,
yeah,
very professional.
for sure. So the heart of it all is this whole microfactory concept. What exactly are we talking about here? What makes them so micro, and why should we even care?
Okay, so imagine this. Instead of those gigantic factories, the ones we usually picture on the other side of the world, churning out clothes nonstop.
Yeah, giant warehouses,
Yeah.
tons of,
Yeah.
exactly, huge places, lots of people. Now, shrink that whole operation down, like way down. That's basically what a microfactory is. Smaller, way more localized, and here's the kicker, designed to produce clothes on demand.
Wait, so instead of making tons of clothes and then shipping them all over the place, they just...
They make what's needed when it's needed, and ideally as close as possible to where it'll be sold.
That's pretty mind-blowing. So how does that even work in the real world? Like, how fast are we talking?
Well, Rodinia claims they can go from digital design to finished garment in just 48 hours.
48 hours. That's insane. Like, I can barely get a pizza delivered in 48 hours.
Right. It's incredibly fast. And on top of that, they say their process has a 40% smaller carbon footprint compared to traditional methods.
Okay, so we're talking faster, more efficient, and better for the environment. Sign me up.
But seriously, how do they pull that off? What's the magic formula here?
It's a combination of things. For starters, the whole process is digitally driven. Design files go straight to the machines, cutting out tons of steps and waste that you'd have in a traditional factory setting. But the biggest game changer, their production process is completely water-free.
Water-free. Hold on. Isn't water, like, essential for making clothes?
You'd think so, right?
Mm-hmm.
The reality is traditional textile production is a huge drain on water resources.
Yeah.
We're talking about growing the cotton, dyeing the fabrics, washing and treating the materials. It all adds up. In fact, the fashion industry accounts for something like 20% of global wastewater. Rodinia's method cuts all of that out completely.
Wow, 20%. I had no idea it was that bad.
Okay, so if this tech takes off, we could be looking at a massive reduction in the fashion industry's environmental impact.
Potentially, yeah. And that's not even considering the whole problem of overproduction, which
Oh,
is...
right. In one of the articles we read, there was this crazy statistic that like 30% of clothes produced never even get sold. It's a ridiculous amount of waste. It's estimated that 140 billion garments are produced every year, but 42 billion of them end up in landfills, just sitting there. Rodinia's just-in-time production model could be a game changer in tackling that specific issue.
Okay, so less waste, less water, faster production. It all sounds great, but how do we know they're the real deal?
Well, they seem to be pretty committed to transparency, which is a good sign. They talk a lot about impact data transparency on their website, meaning they track and share information about the environmental impact of their production process.
So no more shady business practices, no more hiding behind vague sustainability claims. They're putting it all out there.
Exactly. And frankly, that's what more and more consumers are demanding these days.
Hmm.
People want to know where their clothes come from, how they're made, and what kind of impact they're having on the planet.
Speaking of consumer demand, I was watching this YouTube video by the Index Project, and they interviewed Mads Nergard, the designer. He called Rodinia's technology a revolution in fashion.
Yeah, that's a strong word, but I can see why he'd say that.
Right, so it got me thinking, is this really the revolution we've been waiting for in sustainable fashion?
There's definitely a lot of potential here. The technology itself is impressive, and like we said, it addresses some major issues in the industry, like overproduction and waste. Plus, it opens up possibilities for more ethical and localized manufacturing.
So not only are they making clothes differently, but they're also changing where and how those clothes are made.
Exactly. One of the articles mentioned a potential microfactory location in either England or Lithuania. Imagine that. Instead of shipping clothes across the globe, they're made closer to where they'll be sold. That's a huge reduction in transportation emissions right there.
And potentially a boost for local economies too, right?
Absolutely. It could create jobs and stimulate regional economies in a way that traditional manufacturing models often don't.
So we've talked about the why and the what of Rodinia Generation. But what about the how? How does this microfactory magic actually happen? I was watching that YouTube video again, and they used this interesting analogy. They said the microfactory hardware is like the body, and the software is like the brain.
It's a great analogy. Basically, Rodinia has combined super advanced software with state-of-the-art hardware to create this incredibly precise and adaptable system.
So it's like a high-tech sewing machine on steroids.
Kind of, but on a much larger scale.
Yeah.
And way more sophisticated. The software handles everything from design to pattern cutting to even the smallest adjustments during the sewing process.
The video also mentioned that the garments are made by first cutting these individual modules, which are then sewn together. So it's still a pretty hands-on process, even with all this technology.
And that's actually one of the really interesting things about this whole approach. By bringing production closer to consumers and relying on skilled labor, it could lead to a resurgence of traditional craftsmanship in the fashion industry.
Wow. So not only is Rodinia changing how clothes are made, but they're also potentially changing who makes them and where. It's really incredible to see this level of innovation combined with a clear focus on sustainability and ethical practices.
It's definitely an exciting time for fashion, and it begs the question, if we can have clothes that are stylish, ethically made, and better for the planet, why would we ever go back to the old way of doing things?
It's a good question, and it's definitely something to think about. Well, that's all the time we have for today's deep dive. Thanks for joining us as we explored the world of Rodinia Generation and the future of fashion. Until next time, keep exploring.
Thanks for listening to the Nordic Venture Show. Don't forget to subscribe and stay tuned for more stories of innovation from the Nordics.